Welcome back. I'm Dawn. Nice to have you back for day 2 of my little Yin series inspired by Paul Grilley. And in this practice, I give a lot of information about the practice of Yin Yoga. So as you're holding some poses, I'll give you some things to think about, some things to learn as well. And one of the things about Yin that might not be clear at first is its power to transform. And I've added to my art a little bit. So this third chakra symbol here is the transformation, the solar plexus chakra. When we usually think about this transformation being powerful and being strong, but in Yin we transform gently over time with patience. And the task is stillness and relaxation and calm. So I hope you enjoy this practice today. I'm looking forward to it myself. Let's begin with our Yin. We will begin today's Yin practice, day 2 of the series inspired by Paul Grilley's sequences. We'll start in Sleeping Swan today. So come on to your hands and knees and then move your right knee back about a foot or so. Move your left foot and place it in front of the right knee, keeping your left foot where it is. Now slide the right knee backwards as far as you can so that your pelvis is lowering toward the floor. You're going to lean forward. You have your weight on your hands, or you might even be able to come down to elbows. Pause there. So your pelvis may be just suspended right above the floor with some tension in both legs, but primarily the left hip and thigh. You're externally rotating the femur of the front leg, stretching all the muscles and connective tissue on the lateral side of the buttock and thigh. So the rear leg, the hip flexors are being gently stretched as well. So if you feel that you have more room to deepen this pose, you might move your front foot forward, and you might even lie down on it with chest coming over your leg. We're going to hold here in Sleeping Swan for about 3 minutes. So if you're having issues with your knee, you may keep the foot closer, your front knee. You might keep the foot closer in underneath your hips, or maybe even sit on it. If your back knee is bothering you, you could pad it by rolling your mat under a couple of times, or place a pillow under your shin. And if this Sleeping Swan is just not working for you at all, then you might just come back up to a seat, put ankle onto knee of the other leg, and just stay here in the eye of the needle pose. You could even lie down on your back with this eye of the needle, and you'll be getting some nice benefits in the legs and the hips in this position as well. As you come forward, you could be lying on a bolster. I'm just kind of melting into that support, or you could just sit in deer pose with both feet to one side and knees to the other. You could place a pillow under the hip of your back leg. To keep from rolling to one side, to keep the hips level. And then just keep reaching that front legs, hip to the floor. Settle in, try to fully relax here. This can be a very intense sensation in that left hip right now. But you might like to think of it as just a really deep tissue massage, which it essentially is. If it's too intense, you have to listen to your inner voice and back out a little bit. Bring the foot further underneath you, or come back up to elbows or even hands. Or again, just find that big pillow to recline forward upon. Take a few more breaths here. Release a little more in that hip. One more breath. Now use your hands to walk your body back upright and then roll onto that left hip really slowly, and it should feel really good, kind of a little massage coming out there. And then bring your feet behind you, your hands in front of you, and just make your way slowly to downward facing dog to stretch this out. Or you could bring knees down and walk hands forward, keeping hips over knees, and just take heart to earth or puppy posture. If you're still in down dog, you might like to walk your dog, alternating, lifting one heel and then the other. And one more option, plant that left heel and lift the right leg up, three-legged dog. And here, just smooth that leg around. You're just stretching that out. Place that foot down, lift the other leg up. And again, just move it around. Stretch it out. Find what feels good. Both feet come down, knees to the floor, and just recline back in child's pose. Just take a couple breaths here to relax. Release, rebound. So yin is such a nice balance for yang exercise. Those rhythmic movements like walking, jogging, weightlifting, swimming, which alternately contract and relax your muscles. They help you develop flexibility with repetitive, rhythmic, yang type stretches. Whereas your yin practice is going to create a gentle traction of connective tissue. And this is important because it's not always muscular strength that gives us feeling of ease and lightness in the body. It's flexibility of the joints. So take one more breath here in child. And then engaging the core, press with the hands, walk yourself up, and we'll set up on the other side. So again, from hands and knees, take your left knee backward, bring your right foot forward, and set up for your variation of sleeping swan here on the other side. Again, find any bolster or support to make this pose more accessible, a pose in which you can fully relax, release, without having to hold on to anything to support yourself in any way. And again, we'll take 3 minutes on this side. So there's an interesting analogy for
the construction of our muscles. Muscles are up to 90% water during intense exercise. And the elasticity of muscle tissue varies dramatically with its fluid content, a lot like a sponge. So if a sponge is dry, it doesn't stretch, it might even tear. But if a sponge is wet, it can twist and stretch a great deal. So often in yoga, we like to do warm-up as we do in Ashtanga by doing a series of vinyasas or sun salutations to warm up the muscles. And in this way, working the muscles fills them with blood and makes them more elastic for the rest of the practice. And exercising muscles in a yang way also helps the bones to stay healthy, because when muscles are vigorously pulling on the bones respond by becoming thicker and stronger. But it's interesting that these really solid, even professional athletes don't retire because of muscular problems. Typically, they retire because of joint problems, and maybe you can relate. Bad ankles, bad backs, bad knees that aren't functioning in the way that they used to are the injuries that force athletes to retire and cause this shuffling around that elderly people tend to do. But yin postures will gently stretch and rehabilitate that connective tissue that forms our joints. So here in your sleeping swan, just really got into those hip joints. One more breath. And then again, using your hands, taking your time to transition slowly, working your way back into downward facing dog or puppy, your choice, or a little of both. Walk your dog if that feels good. Or again, take that three-legged dog. First one leg up. Maybe hips stay level. Maybe you lift one hip above the other. Straight or bent leg. And then the other leg. Your three-legged dog. Or any kind of rebound that feels like it's releasing. That intense stress of the hips. Come on down into child's pose. Take a break here. A few breaths. So this connective tissue that we're working on in the yin practice is quite inert. Is a very changing tissue, and it adapts to the stresses that are put upon it. If we never bend our knees or stretch our spines, the connective tissue shortens to its minimum length. The minimum length that's needed to accommodate our current movements. And then our joints become kind of shrink-wrapped by that shortened connective tissue. So if we want to maintain our joint flexibility, we have to exercise them, but not in the way we exercise muscles. We exercise these joints in a yin way to achieve most benefit. from your child's pose, start to use your hands to lift yourself up. And our next pose will be half frog, which will stretch hamstrings and the inner thighs with an internal hip rotation. So sitting with one leg straight and out to the side a little bit, your other leg will be folded kind of in a half hero's pose or virasana position with the foot near your hip and the top of the foot down to the earth. You could have it pointed in this way, or you could flex the foot. Open the legs to a comfortable width, and then you're going to lean forward. So lean forward over the left leg to begin. So it's kind of a little twist here to turn heart toward your left knee. And then you may have a bolster underneath your body so that you can just recline forward. If you're starting to feel any back issues, just keep it straight and lean forward on your hands. Or you could sit up higher on a cushion. Lifting the hips above the knees can be a help to the back. If this is bothering your knee, you might bring legs closer together. Or you could bend your left knee with the foot into your inner thigh. Or you could just have a block under your bent knee. So you might be kind of in a half butterfly. If your hamstrings are feeling really tight, then put a pillow under the straight leg or bend it way up and just lean on your thigh. So we'll be here for a couple of minutes, so enjoy. Just letting your back round and relax. No pulling, no forcing. Just let gravity encourage the deepening. In fact, the rounding of your back offers even more spinal flexion. So to get a more rounded back, the bolster under your chest could really be a benefit to encourage that flexion. If your neck feels like it needs a support, a block under the forehead, or a block or your forehead to your knee, depending on your position, just find a support for the head to take any strain or stress out of the neck. So perhaps you are noticing and learning all the ways that yin and yang forms of exercise supplement each other. They are really both forms necessary. So now use your hands, walk yourself up. Lean back on your hands to release your hips. And then use your right hand to straighten your right leg. And just take a little seated back bend here. Your legs could be straight or crossed. Inhale, lift the heart. Lift the chin up. Take a breath here. Bring the bottoms of the feet to the edges of your mat, knees up. Just take a couple rounds, windshield wipers. Just releasing the hips. hips and the hamstrings in this way. Okay. Now we'll set up for half frog on the other side. So again, in the way that you did on the other side, find your shape of the pose for half frog. Now with the right leg extended and the left bent behind you or next to you. With your bolster or without, just drop the chin, round the back, round down. Find any comfortable position for your arms. They could be out to your sides, or they could be reaching forward toward your foot. And again, remember this is you're kind of angling your heart toward the knee of your right leg, and then release, let go for a couple minutes here. So if you could look at a view of the spine and the tissues and the muscles that overlay the bones, you would see that there are deep yin connective tissues that bind bone to bone. And over that are the more superficial yang muscle tissues that contract and move. And all the tissues of the body have to undergo stress to stay healthy. If we never bend our joints, they become stiff and painful. So we've all heard the term, use it or lose it. And all forms of exercise can be classified as yin or yang based on the tissues that they target. Yang is characterized by rhythm, repetition, on the muscles and the flow of the blood. While yin is characterized by gentle traction. So take one more breath here in your half frog. And again, walking your body up using your hands. Bring hands behind you, lean back, release the hips. Take a breath. Left hand to left ankle, straighten out that left leg. And again, take your seated back bend, legs straight or crisscross. Take a breath, lifting the heart, lifting the chin. And then feet up to the edges of the mat. A couple windshield wipers. And then just lie down, flat on your back. Rest in pentacle. That 5-pointed shape. Reaching fingertips out to the sides, maybe slightly up, star-shaped. Toes out, legs wider than your mat. Neck long, tuck your chin slightly to just relax here in pentacle, this 5-pointed star. With your exercise regimen, your long-term goal of weight training might be to make your muscles stronger. But right after you're done with your training session, your muscles might feel weak and exhausted. But you've learned that after weeks and months of training and rest, the muscles do get stronger. Take one more breath here. And roll to one side and make your way slowly, taking your time, back up to a seat. And we'll prepare for dragonfly pose, or sometimes it's known as straddle. So straddle or dragonfly is going to stretch the back of the thighs, the lower spine, and especially the inner thighs. So progression in this pose might come slowly, but that's okay, because even if you are only in this pose a little bit and you feel sensation, then you're doing it exactly right and getting benefit from this pose. So your legs will be about 90 degrees apart, or maybe more, and you lean forward. So your hands can come to the floor in front of you, and as your flexibility increases, you might then bring elbows to the floor, maybe eventually the head to the floor or the head to a block. Or you could have your cheeks in your palms and your elbows could support your head and your neck. In this way, you want an anterior tilt to the hips, so come to the front of those sit bones as you start to come down. So if you're having back issues, sit up on a big pillow, elevate your hips, and just keep your back straight. And you might have your hands behind your back to kind of help that positioning. If your knees are hurting in this way, bring legs closer together. Maybe put blocks under the knees if your hamstrings are super tight. You could even bring feet to the floor with knees really bent and sit up on a cushion and lean forward from here. So find your way to come into relaxation here in Dragonfly. You could use a bolster under your chest, or blocks under your forearms if you're pretty close to the floor and need to have the floor be a little higher for you. So let all of these props accommodate what you need, and we'll just release and relax here in Dragonfly for 3 minutes. So if you're involved in aerobic conditioning, your goal may be to lower your blood pressure and your heart rate. But when you're in an aerobics class or you're out jogging, your goal is to raise your heart rate and keep it raised. And then after weeks and months of this regular training, your resting blood pressure and your heart rate drop to lower levels based on the time you've spent exercising to make those changes. So that's kind of a normal training effect of the yang exercises that we're familiar with, either weight training or aerobic conditioning. The short-term effects of the exercise are the opposite of the long-term effects that we desire. So the same is true of Yin Yoga practice. The long-term goal of the practice is to have strong yet really flexible joints. But at the end of a long Yin pose, like you may experience with Dragonfly, is that the joints can feel fragile and vulnerable. And so that's why we take a little time for a slow rebound, a little time to just totally rest the body in a neutral position, because then that fragile, vulnerable feeling passes as our body is allowed to rebound. So, for short periods of time, connective tissues kind of resist being stressed. But they will slowly release and change when that moderate stress, like you may be experiencing here in Dragonfly, is maintained for 3 to 5 minutes. So that's why we hold these yin poses longer than in our yang practice, to really have an impact on those joints and connective tissues. All right, so use your hands. Slowly roll the back up. Place your hands behind you and just tighten up your leg muscles. Maybe rotate at the ankles. And then come into a cross-legged seat and just take a little seated back bend, lifting the heart. And you could stay there, or if you'd like a little more hip and heart opening, place feet to the edges of the mat and lift hips to hammock. And height of the hips is not so much the goal as just a release. Go to your place of sensation, of opening, where it feels like a good release to that intense dragonfly stress in the thighs, the lower spine, and the inner thighs. Come back to a cross-legged seat, and let's just take a gentle twist to the right. Again, very gentle, just releasing. So relax in your hips, relax in your shoulders. Just find a gentle pause, looking over to the right. And release, and go over to the left again. Consciously relaxing in hips, shoulders, as you gaze to the left. Just take another breath here. And return to the front. Okay, so moving into Swan. It's very similar from the Sleeping Swan where we started, but we're going to be targeting not only the hip flexors, but also kind of a back bending movement. So to get into Swan, first we'll go back to that Sleeping Swan position. And some people know this as pigeon from the more yang forms of yoga. So get back into Sleeping Swan, laying your body down on your leg. And then use your arms to push the torso up and maybe even back. So you can drop your head back and notice that the bend on your spine is increased even more. Experiment with keeping your pelvis down or with letting it twist up as you bend back. And then you'll notice that this targets different parts of the spine. So just explore what your body is asking for. And we'll hold this for a minute here. So to center your hips, you might put some support under the hip of the bent knee to keep the hips a little bit more level, or you could just be sitting in deer with the back leg bent, left knee by right foot. You could place a bolster under both hips to really be able to relax and stay even longer here in swan. Your hands could be up on blocks to lift the floor a little higher. And you can have the hands further away or closer to your hips. You could even clasp your hands behind your back to lift that way. To deepen, you'll move your foot forward. Flexing that foot. So take a few more breaths here. Maybe deepen a little more. And then roll onto your right hip very slowly. Let your left hand bring your left leg around. And just take a round of windshield wipers again to release the hips. This sequence is very focused on the hips, you'll notice. All right. And then let's set this up on the other side. So now you're coming down into your sleeping swan to get your legs all set up, your hips level. The angle of your front leg right for you. Set up your props, your bolsters, whatever you need. And then with your hands, walk your torso up. And again, even back. And we'll hold this for 1 minute here. As your connective tissues change, it's kind of like how butter will go from stiff to melted. It's a phase change. So holding a stress on connective tissue for several minutes creates a phase change in its fluids, which results in a lengthening of the tissue and a feeling of a little more ease, allowing you to deepen that pose over time. This phase change also allows for a greater movement of energy or qi that flows through the tissues, which is pleasurable, especially as you release the pose. And more importantly, this flow of energy, blood, nutrients into these areas that were closed promotes healing. So slowly roll out onto the hip. And again, feet set up for windshield wipers. Take a few rounds. Enjoy that release. And next we'll come into a half saddle pose. Where we'll be stretching the thigh and the sacrolumbar spine. So bringing your right leg next to your body, again, as in that hero position, and the other leg straight out in front of you, or you could have knee bent up. When you start to lean back in this half saddle position. You could be leaning back to blocks, or you could have bolsters and pillows all set up behind you, depending on what your body needs. And let there be a little arch in your lower back. So you might go to elbows, to bolster, or maybe even all the way down onto your back. A signal that you've gone far enough is if the bent knee really starts to lift quite a bit up off the floor. There's no need to go down that far. You feel the sensation, that's the place, that's the position for you. Your hands might go under your head or above your head to even deepen that stress in your hip flexors. And if this is not working so well for you, you could begin with feet wide, as in a windshield wiper position. You could lie down on your back. And then bring the heel closer to your hip and take that knee out wider, out to the edge of your mat. And if all of this is just not right for you, your knees, you could just turn over on your stomach and come into Sphinx on the elbows, and you'll be targeting much of the same areas. If you have come to elbows behind you, then resting a bolster behind your back, either crosswise or lengthwise, you can play with which way feels most restful to you. And that allows you to just relax back a little more. For a little ease on your knee, sit a little higher. For ease on your ankle, you might roll a towel, place that underneath. So we'll be here for 1 more minute. So if you are new to yoga, you'll probably experience a phase change during a posture, but the physical lengthening might not be very profound at first. So you may experience a pleasant energetic release, even if you're not sinking deeper into the pose. But practicing persistently causes the fibers of the connective tissue to grow and realign, and eventually allows for a greater range of motion as well. So these yin forms of exercise just take time and require patience, mindful stillness. So come back to your elbows or press with your hands and roll to one side to release that leg. Straight legs in front of you, tighten and release the kneecaps a couple times. And then let's set up for half saddle on the other side. So bringing the other leg behind, coming on back. Again, finding your position with supports or flat to the floor. Legs in a shape that's right for you. Fully relaxing. Relax any muscles that you feel are gripping or holding. Because to get into the connective tissue and stress it, the muscles around that joint have to be relaxed. If the muscles are tense and holding, then the connective tissue doesn't take the stress and you won't be getting as much benefit. So scanning your body, looking for any place that's still holding, coming out of the pose a little bit if you can't relax it and release it to a place where you can, just fully relaxed, especially in the target area. You know, if you are on your elbows, you may be using some muscular strength in that area, but here we're really targeting the sacrolumbar spine and the thigh area. So that's where you want to focus your relaxation. And all along the spine as well, to let that connective tissue be stretched as well. All right, once again, use your hands, pressing yourself up slowly, rolling to the side to release your bent leg. And lie back, once again, flat on your back in pentacle. And we'll just rest here to rebound and release for a minute. So stay with a yin attitude here, just observing the energy moving through your body. Let anxiousness or any aggressiveness fall away, and patiently wait. The power of yin is not time. Is not effort. The power happens over time. So at this time, from your back, we'll do some movements in folded pose to just unwind any tension from your spine. So drawing your right knee in, left leg is straight. Let's take a few breaths here, kind of hugging that right thigh into your chest. Steady, even breath. Release the right knee, straighten that leg, pull in the left knee. And again, hug it in, take a few breaths here. And release that knee. Both legs go straight. Take a breath, and then bring in one knee and the other. Hug both knees in, give them a big loving squeeze. Bring forehead up to knees and hold that, really getting some length in the spine. Breathing here. And finally, release. So rolling over to your left side, make your way slowly up to a seat, a staff pose. And here we're going to go into caterpillar, and you might like to sit up on a folded blanket or have your pelvis on a pillow to raise your hips, especially if there's any discomfort in your back. You want to raise your hips. You could do this caterpillar variation lying on your back with legs up the wall, literally or figuratively. Or you could just have your knees bent up and rest your torso flat against your knees. The straighter your back is, the less discomfort you may find there if it's too intense. If your hamstrings are tight in this forward fold, then a bolster goes under your bent knees. So caterpillar, as you start to tuck the chin and round the back, curling down, you'll be stretching your legs and the entire spinal column. And in this pose, you have an opportunity to really relax the mind, draw your senses inward. Relax the thighs, and don't worry about any slight bend in the knees. As long as you feel sensation, you're doing it exactly right. And then the task is just to relax. If your head needs some support to relieve any pain in the neck, you can support your head with your hands, with a block, with a pillow. Continue to be aware of your pelvis tilting forward, anterior tilt to the pelvis, or continue to lean forward to the front of those sit bones. And if your hips are up high and you're feeling some hyperextension in your knees, that's okay. A slight stress to the knees will actually help to heal those joints. But if it's too much, we don't want that. You want to be able to relax with that sensation, but no pain. So put a pillow under the knees if there's any pain. Your hands and arms can rest anywhere. No need to pull here. It's not about going lower. It's about stillness, sensation, release. If your body feels ready to deepen, you can open the legs a little wider and allow the head to lower between the legs. You could even sit up on a firm bolster and have blocks under your calves to go further into this pose. Learning to wait and hold these poses for longer periods of time. This is a practice that calms the mind. Cultivates yin qualities of patience, gratitude, contentment. One more breath here. And now use your hands to push slowly, rolling on up to come out, taking your time. Remember, you have created some vulnerability in these joints, so transitioning slowly, respect the time it takes for your body to rebound. So leaning back on your hands, you can just do a sitting back bend here, or if you like to go into that hammock, lifting the hips, tipping the chin up, just stretch in whatever way feels good to you. And then we'll bring hands back by the sides. And once again, just a gentle seated twist with straight legs this time. Taking a few breaths to the right. Feeling tall through the crown of your head as you inhale. Relaxing, drawing lower ribs together as you exhale, deepen into this twist. On your next inhale, turn to the front. Take a breath and exhale, twist left. Again here, use your inhale to lift through the crown, coming to the front of those sit bones. And your exhale to deepen, looking further to the left, lower ribs knitted in. And then come on back, facing the front of your mat. Just lie back. We'll take pentacle here for another minute. So yin and yang coexist. There's a muscular effort required to balance ourselves into a pose and to maintain that gentle traction that we're seeking. So the yang effort is certainly present even in our yin practice. And it's yin to passively observe the sensations that arise in your body. And it is yang to make the effort needed to maintain the pose. So from your back, now we'll come into a spinal twist that'll really relax tension in your muscles and meridians. And as we are getting close to the end of the practice, it's a nice one to do at this time. Just kind of relieves any kinks or strains that can come from the prior poses. So bring both knees up toward your chest, lift the feet off the floor, and across the left leg over the right, and then twist both legs to the right. This is twisted roots. And this gives a very full spinal twist. Your arms can be out to the sides or overhead. If you have any tingling in the arms, then lower them, or even put your hands on your ribs. So here in this twist, just let gravity help you release, lengthen. If you feel that your shoulder is floating up, you can put a pillow underneath it so you can just relax onto the pillow. If your knees are floating up above the ground, just put a pillow there. So we'll hold here in this twisted roots for a minute. Just normal breathing. And just observing the effect that this pose has on your breath. One more breath here. And then slowly bring knees back up. Unwrap the legs. Hold them into your chest. Give them a nice little hug here. And now you'll take the right leg over the left and take both legs to the left. Again, find a similar position on this side. Gazing over to the right. Using pillows, bolsters, cushions, wherever necessary. And once again, relax into gravity here in this great spinal twist. Take a couple more breaths. And now slowly lift the knees. Untwist the legs. Hug your knees into chest. Give them a squeeze. Maybe a little rock side to side. Planting feet flat to the floor with knees up. You might take a couple rounds of windshield wipers. Lying down. Before we prepare for pentacle as a shavasana. Full relaxation. So if you'll need any pillows under the head, bolsters under the knees, you can get that all set up now. Just close your eyes, letting your physical body just sink into the floor. Notice any various sensations of energy moving through the body. This chi or this prana. Blood and fluids moving into or out of the parts of the body that were stressed during previous postures. At first, it may be hard to notice these sensations, but with stillness and focus, we can start to be aware of the beating of the heart and how this rhythmic beat extends out to the shoulders and down through the arms until maybe we begin to be aware of this pulsing sensation right out to the fingers. And can you also bring this awareness of this pulsing energy moving down into your lower body, your hips, your pelvis, down through your thighs and lower legs. Can you feel this pulsating energy right into your feet and maybe into your toes? With the arms and legs spread open against the floor, your body makes full contact with the floor. And this is very helpful as you learn to feel the sensations in your body. Tucking your chin toward your chest allows the back of your neck to lengthen. In some yoga practices, this relaxation part of our practice is called constructive relaxation, where you become aware of this very intentional release, scanning your body from your toes to your back, your arms, your head, your face, for any tension and release. You might also consider that your organs can be released and relaxed here as well. Continue to notice the energy flowing throughout all parts of your body as you calmly breathe, even noticing pauses between your breaths. And now finally, with one more breath, begin to bring some movement to fingers and toes, rotating ankles and wrists, bringing movement back to the body as you draw knees into chest. Give them a squeeze, a little rock side to side. And then roll over to your left side. Pause for a breath. Engage the core as you press with your hands. Re-energizing your body as you sit up. Coming into an easy seat, coming to the front of those sit bones, sitting tall. Bringing hands to heart. Just notice how you feel physically, mentally, emotionally. and with your breath, the light in me shines, bows to the gentle, bright light within you. Namaste.
Namaste. So, I hope you feel all yinned out and great. That was some nice work on the hips. So tomorrow would be a great day to join me for whichever day you are kind of getting familiar with our gentle Ashtanga. I have a little yang practice, and then I'll see you again for day 3, yin. Meanwhile, have a blessed day. Shanti. Peace.